The hearth hadn't smoked since yesterday. He was lying, testing, probing for a reaction. Her silence seemed to encourage him. "I told you this place wasn't safe," Calder continued, voice smooth as thawing ice. "And seeing your car out here, well, it concerned me. I was hoping you'd invite me in, but since you didn't—" He stepped closer. She heard the crunch of snow under his boots. "I figured we should talk again, properly." Noah whimpered from behind the sofa. Lena pressed a finger to her lips, signaling him to stay silent. Calder's next words chilled her blood. "Did you find the map yet?" Her heart stopped. He knew about the map, the symbols, the journal. The hatch, the treasure, everything. He wasn't guessing. He knew. Because, Calder added, "You can't open the hatch without the map. And you can't access the vault without opening the hatch." Lena pressed her back against the wall, knees trembling. Vault, the word echoed through her chest like a punch. The chamber below wasn't just a hidden room. It was a vault, engineered, fortified, designed for protection, or imprisonment. Calder tapped the door lightly again. "Lena," he said, voice lowering to a coaxing whisper, "you don't understand what you've found. That fortune doesn't belong to you, it never did." She swallowed hard. Her voice barely worked. "Go away." Footsteps stopped. Silence stretched. Then Calder chuckled softly. "You don't have a choice. Not anymore." The words slithered under her skin. Her fingers tightened on the poker. Calder's offer a long silence followed before Calder spoke again. "Listen," he said, tone shifting to something rehearsed. "This doesn't have to be a conflict. You're scared. It's understandable. You stumbled into something bigger than you can imagine." He paced slowly across the porch. Lena tracked his shadow as it brushed past the frost-covered window. "You and your boy can come out peacefully," Calder continued, "and we can talk like adults. I'm willing to offer protection, enough money to start a new life somewhere warm, somewhere safe." Lena's stomach twisted. Protection, money, safety. His words were poison wrapped in silk. He wanted the vault, the jewels, the Empire's hidden fortune buried beneath her floor. "Or," Calder said, voice cooling, "you can keep hiding in there until the storm traps you in for good." "But—" he paused. The wind rattled the wooden boards outside. "The men with me aren't patient. And once they realize you open the hatch, they won't knock next time." Lena's breath trembled. Men, plural, more than one. More than the silhouette she saw by the trees. More than the footsteps she heard upstairs. They were surrounding the cabin, waiting, hunting, and she had just unlocked the one thing they wanted most. An impossible decision. The poker felt too light in her hands. Useless. A toy against men willing to kill for fortune. She pressed her forehead to the cool log wall, letting the rough grain bite into her skin. She needed to think, fast, without panic, without letting fear swallow the part of her that still understood survival. She couldn't fight them. She couldn't outrun them. She couldn't open the door. And she couldn't call for help. Even if the phone had service, which it didn't, no one would reach them in time. She drew a slow breath. The vault below held a fortune worth more than her entire life's suffering combined. Enough to erase her past. Enough to create safety for Noah. Enough to rebuild every broken dream. But possessing that fortune meant death. Calder wouldn't negotiate. He wouldn't share. He wouldn't leave witnesses. She knelt beside Noah, pushing hair from his eyes. His small hands trembled. "I'm scared." He whispered, "Me too." Lena said honestly, and with fear came clarity. There was only one thing she could do. She had to get ahead of Calder. She had to use the cabin's secrets before he did. She had to think like someone who wasn't running, but like someone protecting sacred ground. She squeezed Noah's hand. "Get ready. We're going to hide." Where? She looked toward the pantry, the cold room, the crawl space behind the hearth, the narrow shadows upstairs, but none of them would protect them from men who knew the cabin, Her gaze drifted to the hidden hatch, the vault below, the cold chamber with walls lined in metal. The one place Calder wouldn't expect her to go, because he thought she feared it, and she did. But fear would not save them. Knowledge would. Calder's last message, Lena. Calder called again, voice sharp now. Open the door. She didn't answer. The doorknob rattled. Lena held Noah close. A low growl filled Calder's voice. Fine, have it your way, but don't pretend you don't know what you found. The knock that followed wasn't polite. It was a threat. I'll be back, he said, and next time I won't be alone on the porch. His footsteps retreated, crunching through snow. Lena didn't breathe until they faded completely. Even then, she didn't trust the silence. She turned to Noah, voice steady despite the tremble beneath it. Listen to me carefully, she whispered. We're going down there. Noah's eyes widened with horror. Mom, no, you said. I know what I said. Lena whispered. But we're out of time. She lifted the hatch. The cold breathed upward again, sharp and metallic. No, Noah whimpered, shaking his head rapidly. Mom, please. She cupped his face gently, fiercely. Do you trust me? Tears welled in his eyes. Always. Then listen. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. The only way to survive this is to understand what we're up against, and the answers aren't up here. She pointed toward the door. They're down there. Noah clutched her hand. Lena tightened her grip on the lantern. The cold from the vault rose up around them. The jewels waited below like frozen embers, silent, deadly, glimmering with the brilliance of a fallen empire. And in the distance, beyond the pines, Calder Knox gathered his men. As Lena prepared to descend back into the dark, she realized the truth in her bones. The vault wasn't just a hiding place. It was a battleground. And the fight for their lives had already begun. As the tension thickened and night approached, she knew they were stepping into the depths of danger, and that the next revelation waiting below would change everything. After Calder's threat drifted into the cold silence, Lena felt the cabin's walls shrink around her, tightening like a great wooden fist ready to crush. Snow hissed softly outside, the wind sharpening into long, icy breaths that pressed against the windows with an almost human persistence. And somewhere in that vast white wilderness, Calder Knox was gathering men who walked through storms unbothered, who watched the cabin with quiet, predatory patience. It was no longer a question of if they would return. Only when Lena kneeled at the open hatch, staring down into the breath of cold rising from the vault. Noah clutched her hand, small and trembling, the lantern casting unsteady gold across his frightened face. Mom, he whispered, are you sure this is safer? No, Lena admitted softly, but it's safer than staying where they expect us. She eased the hatch fully open and lowered the ladder again. The cold exhaled upward, older than winter, sharper than the storm outside, carrying the metallic scent of secrets sealed too long. Noah gripped her tighter. I don't like it. I don't either, she whispered. But upstairs isn't safe, the forest isn't safe, the pantry isn't safe. Calder knows this cabin, but he doesn't know what's below it, not completely. Her voice shook, but she steadied it. I won't let them take you, ever. No. As small shoulders rose and fell as he took a shaky breath. Lena helped him onto the ladder first. Go slowly, I'm right behind you. He nodded, eyes wide, and descended step by step. Lena followed, pulling the hatch closed above them. The heavy wood thunked shut, cutting off the dim daylight and sealing them beneath the floor in a whisper of darkness. The lantern glowed faintly, illuminating the frost-laced metal walls. The vault felt colder today, like it sensed danger approaching. They reached the bottom. Noah clung to her side immediately. his breath forming cloudy halos that drifted upward before fading into the frost-filled air. And in the silence, Lena felt it, a deep vibration, soft, muted, distant, footsteps above, multiple footsteps. Her blood froze, the ambient above snow muffled sound, but the cabin's old beams carried vibrations like nerves carrying pain. Someone, or several someones, were moving across the floor overhead. Heavy boots thudded softly, pacing, pausing, listening. Lena slowly lowered the lantern's brightness. "Mom, they're here," Noah whispered. "Quiet," she mouthed. They pressed into the narrow shadow between two metal chests, sinking into a darkness so complete the lantern's glow barely reached their faces. Lena wrapped an arm around Noah, pulling him against her, listening to each deliberate step above. One man walked across the living room, another circled the kitchen, another, she could hear it, stood directly above the hatch. Her nails dug into her palms painfully. They'd broken in. The cabin was no longer a sanctuary. It was a trap, and Lena and Noah were already inside the jaws of it. The footsteps paused. A man's voice, low, careless, billed through the boards. Calder said she's got the map. If she opened the hatch, she'll be below. Lena's veins turned to ice. Another man grunted. "Why don't we just break it open?" Calder said no. "He wants to be here when it opens." "Oh, right. You want to explain to him why we didn't wait?" The first man replied, half amused, half afraid. A third voice chimed in deeper, colder. "Shut up and listen." Silence. The men stilled, listening, waiting for movement, for breath, for the sound of Lena and Noah hiding beneath their feet. Lena held Noah tighter, pressing his head gently against her shoulder. She could feel his heartbeat racing as fast as hers, fluttering against her chest like a trapped bird. "We're okay," she whispered silently, her lips brushing his hair. "We're okay, we're okay." But she knew they weren't. Not even close. The search begins. A sudden loud crash made Noah jump. Something heavy had been knocked over furniture, maybe boxes, a table. The men were tearing through the cabin, searching. "Check the pantry." One man barked. Heavy boots thudded. The pantry door creaked open. A pause. Nothing. No one's been in here. The cold-edged pantry air drifted briefly into Lena's memory. She swallowed hard. Then they're upstairs. More footsteps. Stomping, searching, the staircase groaned under their weight. Voices echoed from above, sharp and irritated. No sign of them. Maybe they ran. No tracks outside. Then they must be in here somewhere. A long silence followed. Then the deeper voice spoke again, slow and stern. "Check the floor." Lena's heart stuttered. Noah inhaled sharply. A man walked into the main room above the vault. His boots scraped the boards. They could hear his knuckles rapping the floor. Tap, 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 moving closer, over the carvings, over the cold star, over the hatch. His voice was muffled but clear. "Hear that? Hollow." Another voice replied, "Maybe, but the boards are old." "Old doesn't sound like this." A long pause followed. Lena held Noah tight, tightening her grip until her knuckles whitened. Then, a heavy stomp directly over the hatch. Noah squeezed his eyes shut. Lena pressed her palm over his ear, shielding him. The stomp came again. Then again, the hatch vibrated. A different voice snapped. "Stop." Calder said wait. Silence, but not relief. The men didn't leave. They stood there, multiple shadows shifting above, waiting, watching, listening, breathing, predators above prey. The vault reveals more. Lena forced herself to think, to analyze the vault while the danger pressed down from above. She raised the lantern just enough to study the other two chests. The first chest had cracked open, revealing jewels beyond value or gemstones that shimmered like they carried frozen sparks inside. But the second chest was different, thicker, sealed with locks shaped like constellations. Carved markings along the edges, similar to the map, similar to the floor symbols. She brushed frost away from the lid. Underneath she found something strange, not gems, not gold. Papers, bundles of them, wrapped in waxcloth, stamped with old insignias. The emblems matched the one on the hearth. This was no random treasure. This was evidence, ledgers, names, transactions, secrets tied to powerful people who wanted everything buried. She reached the third chest. This one was smaller, bound in iron, with a latch shaped like interlocking rings. She opened it carefully. A sharp gasp tore from her throat. Inside lay dozens of velvet pouches containing jewelry far more refined than the raw stones. Necklaces, brooches, rings, all old-world craftsmanship. And tucked beneath the pouches a leather-bound notebook. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Another journal, older, darker, thicker with secrets. The cover bore the initials burned into the leather, A.K. Her breath froze. A.K. the jeweler, the man who vanished, the man the cabin once belonged to, the man who fled an empire built on wealth and crime, the man Calder Knox had mentioned by name. She opened the journal, eyes racing over the cramped handwriting. I failed to run far enough. They found me. They will come for what I took. The jewels belong to the families they destroyed, not to the men who bought blood with them. Lena's stomach twisted. This wasn't stolen treasure. This wasn't greed. This was restitution. A fortune hidden to right the wrongs of a criminal empire. A fortune the empire wanted back. The floor above creaked. The men shifted again. And in the chilling silence that followed, Lena understood. Calder wasn't here to protect her. He wasn't here for her safety. He wasn't even here for the jewels. He was here to silence the truth. Forever. The danger descends. A loud thud overhead made Noah jerk. Mom. Boots stomped again. A voice barked. Calder's coming up. We hold here. They were preparing. For her. For the vault. For the moment the hatch would open. Lena's skin prickled with panic. They had to move. Now. Before the men realized the hatch needed only a small tool. Or brute force. To break open. She grabbed Noah's hand. We're leaving the vault. Where, he whispered, terror choked. She scanned the chamber and saw it, a narrow maintenance tunnel near the back wall, half hidden behind rusted chains and frost-covered beams. A way out or a way deeper. Either was better than sitting beneath armed men. There, she whispered, we crawl, we hide, we survive. Noah's grip tightened. Above them, footsteps converged on the hatch. Lena snatched the lantern, the journal, and the velvet pouch of keys from the chest. Move, she breathed. They slipped behind the far chest just as a heavy strike hit the hatch from above. Then another. Boards shook dust down like snow, and Calder's calm, terrible voice called, Lena, open the hatch. As the pounding grew fiercer, Lena pulled Noah into the darkness of the tunnel, heart hammering like war drums. They had seconds, maybe less. The siege had begun, and the cabin, once their sanctuary, was now the battlefield. As the cold swallowed them, and the tunnel tightened around their bodies, Lena realized this fight was no longer about treasure. It was about survival, and she would not let her son die for a fallen empire's fortune. Not tonight, not ever. The maintenance tunnel swallowed them whole, its narrow walls pressing close on either side as Lena pulled Noah deeper into the dark. Frost scraped against her arms, and the lantern's glow wavered dangerously low, its flame shivering under each new shockwave pounding above them. Another crash rattled the hatch, then another. The men were no longer testing the floor. They were breaking through it. Lena pressed a finger to her lips, guiding Noah forward on his hands and knees. Each movement echoed faintly through the tunnel, the cold brushing against their skin with a hunger that felt nearly alive. The air smelled of metal and old secrets. They crawled until the vault space disappeared behind them, swallowed by a curtain of frost-coated shadows. The tunnel sloped sharply downward, cutting through rock and frozen earth like a forgotten vein beneath the cabin. Above them, boots moved, boards groaned, voices rose angry, impatient. Hit it again, thud, the tunnel ceiling vibrated. Noah whimpered softly. Lena reached back, squeezing his hand. "Keep moving," she whispered. "As quiet as you can." Her own voice trembled. The pounding intensified overhead. Dust showered from the ceiling, sparkling in the lantern glow like shattered ice. The tunnel was barely taller than Lena's shoulders. She felt every vibration of violence above, every blow that brought the men closer to the ladder she had just climbed. They were after the vault, but they were also after her. And once they realized she wasn't up there, they'd come searching. The lantern flickered violently as the cold deepened. The lower tunnel, after several agonizing minutes, the tunnel widened just enough for Lena to crouch instead of crawl. She pulled Noah into her lap, letting him rest against her chest so she could hear his heartbeat and know he was still with her. The air down here was thick, stale, barely breathable. "Mom," he whispered, "why is there a tunnel under the cabin?" Lena steadied her breath. The man who lived here must have built it. Why? She didn't answer, because she saw it now. This wasn't just a maintenance tunnel. It was an escape route, a hiding place, a way out, hidden beneath the cabin on purpose by a man who feared the same people now roaming above. A cold realization crept into her bones. The jeweler had been hunted here too, and he had never escaped. "Keep going," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "We have to find where this leads." But as they crawled deeper, something ahead caught her eye, an odd shimmer along the tunnel walls. Thin veins of ice glowed faintly, reflecting the lantern's light in pale blue glints, like trapped stars embedded in the stone. The walls grew colder, the ceiling dipped, and then Lena saw it, a second hatch. Metal, round, bolted into the earth. But this hatch was different from the one in the cabin. This one had been forced from the outside, scrape marks, pry marks, bent hinges. Someone had tried to break into this tunnel from below. "No," Lena breathed, "not someone, something, no." A small hand wrapped around her sleeve. "Mom, I don't like this," she exhaled shakily. "I don't either." She pulled the lantern closer. The metal hatch looked ancient, coated in a thick rime of frost. But the scrape patterns were fresh, new metal burnished under older rust. "What tried to get in from here?" Noah whispered. "It doesn't matter." Lena lied, steadying him. "It's sealed now." But it did matter, because whatever had tried to claw its way up, whatever had left those scratches on the back door, whatever breathed cold into the pantry, it wasn't Calder, and it wasn't his men. Lena had been wrong. There were two dangers closing in on them, one above, one below. The tunnel shuddered suddenly, voices echoing faintly down from the cabin. "They're not here. The hatch is sealed. Check the walls. There has to be something." Lena's blood froze. They were searching for the tunnel entrance. "Noah," she whispered urgently, "we need to go farther." He nodded shakily. They crawled past the scarred sub-hatch, the cold licking at their ankles. The tunnel curved sharply, then emptied into a wider chamber carved roughly into the earth. And it was there Lena saw something she didn't expect. A lantern, old, rusting, long extinguished, and beside it a bootprint, small, human, frozen into the ground. "No," she breathed, "someone else came down here." Noah's voice quivered. "Who?" Lena touched the print with trembling fingers. "Not recent, but not ancient either." "What if Calder already knew about the tunnel?" Noah asked. Her stomach twisted. He probably did. He probably used it. And if he had once tried to get in, he would try again. A new sound rippled through the tunnel, a faint metallic creak. From behind them, the second hatch, the one scarred by claws. Lena turned her head slowly. Her muscles froze. The metal hatch was trembling ever so slightly. Something pressed from underneath. A low, groaning pressure pushed outward, tiny flakes of frost falling from the edges. Noah's breath hitched. "Mom, don't look." she whispered sharply, pulling him close. Turn away now. They backed deeper into the chamber, the lantern trembling violently in Lena's hand. The metal hatch groaned again. Harder, the bolts strained. A distant, unnatural echo whispered through the tunnel walls. Not a voice, not language, a sound like something dragging itself up through frozen stone. Lena grabbed Noah's face with both hands. Go, she whispered. Move fast, don't look back. She pushed him forward, heart hammering so violently her vision rippled at the edges. The cabin above thudded again. Alder's men hammering the main hatch. The sub-hatch trembled again, something clawing from below. They were trapped between the living danger above and the unknown horror rising from below. Noah, she cried softly. Run! They crawled through the tunnel as the groaning metal behind them twisted in its frame. The lantern flickered, the floor vibrated. Cold breath surged from the rear chamber like a living exhale. Something was coming, something not human. Lena grabbed Noah's backpack strap and dragged him into the next bend of the tunnel. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't. The sound behind them grew louder, closer, scraping, dragging, breathing. Lena felt it in her spine, the cold fear of being hunted in a place where light meant nothing. Noah, faster, she whispered fiercely. The tunnel ahead narrowed again, forcing them to squeeze through on hands and knees. Noah whimpered as the earth pressed against his shoulders and ears. It's okay. Lena lied breathlessly. Keep going. Behind them a metallic clang. The sub-hatch had begun to open. Frost erupted down the tunnel in a violent breath. Lena felt it hit her back like a sheet of ice. Noah, go. They scrambled forward, hearts slamming inside their chests. Until finally a faint glimmer of faint daylight ahead. A grate, a vent, an exit. Lena's heart surged. Almost there. The metal behind them groaned open with a scream that echoed through the tunnel like something ancient being reborn. Noah sobbed, Mom, it's coming, I know. Go. They reached the grate. Lena shoved it hard, stuck. She slammed it. No movement. She hit it again, desperation rising like fire in her veins. Mom, Noah cried. Please. She threw her shoulder into it. The grate broke loose, snow blasted inward, and Noah crawled through. Lena hurled herself after him. They tumbled into the blinding white. She turned immediately and slammed the grate back into place. A shadow pressed against the bars from the other side. Not Calder, not one of his men, not human. Lena grabbed Noah and dragged him through the snow as the grate trembled violently, frost exploding outward with each impact. They didn't stop until the cabin's silhouette rose above them like a looming memory. Behind them, the tunnel grated again. In front of them, shadows moved near the porch. They were trapped between monsters of snow and men of silence. As the storm wind howled around them, Lena realized this wasn't a siege anymore. It was a hunt, and they were the prey. As the daylight dimmed beneath the rising blizzard, she clutched Noah close and whispered, Run. We only survive this if we run. The blizzard swallowed their footsteps almost as quickly as they made them. Lena held Noah's hand so tight her knuckles burned, dragging him through knee-deep snow toward the only shelter left. The same cabin now filled with violent strangers, determined to take the truth buried beneath it. The wind cut across her face like shards of ice, turning every breath into a shallow gasp, but she couldn't stop. Not here. Not when the thing in the tunnel was clawing its way up, and not when Calder Knox's men watched the cabin from the trees like wolves circling a wounded doe. Noah stumbled. Lena lifted him into her arms, bracing herself against the storm's fury. Mom, he whispered against her coat, are we going to die? The question pierced her deeper than the cold ever could. No, she murmured fiercely, not today. She wasn't certain of that. Fear twisted tight in her gut. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Giving up was not an option. Noah was all she had, and the world had taken too much from her already. The cabin rose in the storm, a dark shape half shrouded in swirling white. Its windows glowed faintly. A lantern flickered inside. Shadows moved between the beams. Calder's men were still there. Lena lowered herself and Noah behind a snowbank near the back corner of the cabin. The wind howled above them, hiding their breathing. Noah's teeth chattered. "We can't go inside, Mom. They'll see us." "I know," she whispered, "but we're not going inside." She dug into her coat pocket and felt the hard-shell weight of the jeweler's second journal, the one she grabbed from the vault moments before their escape. Even now, she felt its significance pulsing through the leather. Noah buried his face against her chest, and she wrapped one arm around him, shielding him from the wind. Her other hand opened the journal with trembling fingers. She hadn't read more than the first line earlier, but now, buried in a storm, hunted from above and below, she needed answers. And she sensed the dead jeweler had left them somewhere within these pages. The ink inside was dark, pressed deeply into the paper with the urgency of a dying man. Lena held the lantern close and began to read. "The last confession, I left the Empire because I could no longer call myself human while wearing its wealth." The words struck her with a new kind of coal, sharper, moral, cutting her deeper than any frost. "The jewels I carried were never mine. They belonged to the families we destroyed. Every ruby a widow's grief, every diamond a child's stolen future." Lena's breath trembled. "When I ran, I thought I was saving them. I thought returning what we had taken would erase the sins we carved into the world." Another line followed, the handwriting breaking at the edges. "But the men I betrayed do not forgive. They do not sleep. They do not stop." Lena's pulse hammered. "They came for me. They found me in this cabin. They hunted me down like they hunt any loose soul who remembers too much." She clutched the journal tighter. "Before they broke through the walls, I sealed the treasure beneath the hearth. I sealed my confession. I sealed my sins." Her throat tightened painfully. Noah looked up at her, small and frightened. "What does it say?" She brushed his hair with trembling fingers. He was trying to do the right thing. "If you are reading this, then I failed to escape. I failed to return what we stole, and the burden now falls to whoever finds this journal." Lena's breath caught. "Do not take the jewels. They do not belong to you. They are stained with every drop of blood the Empire spilled to claim them." Her stomach twisted. "If you keep them, the men I feared will come for you too. They will not stop. They will not bargain. They will not spare your life or your child's." Her heart clenched violently. "But if you return them, if you deliver them to the families we destroyed, then maybe my death will not be in vain." "No." A small hand closed weakly around her wrist. "Mom," she forced herself to continue, "this is not treasure. It is restitution. It is the weight of 1,000 broken lives. And the question is not whether you can carry it," the final line trembled across the page, "but whether you will be brave enough to let it go." Lena shut the journal. The wind howled over them as if the world itself responded to the jeweler's plea. Noah stared up at her. "Mom, what does this mean?" Her voice cracked. "It means he wasn't hiding stolen gold. He was trying to make up for his crimes." She wiped the snow from Noah's cheek. "And now it's on us." Noah swallowed. "To fix it." She nodded slowly, her heart heavy. "Yes, to fix it." A NEW kind of fear, but fear stabbed her again as she realized the full weight of the truth. If Calder learned the jewels weren't treasure, but the centerpiece of a criminal empire, it would only make him more desperate to claim them. He wasn't here to return anything. He was here to rebuild the empire the jeweler had shattered, to restore the blood-soaked wealth to those it had belonged to, and he would not let Lena walk out of these woods alive if he suspected she understood the secret. Her breath fogged violently into the cold. She clutched Noah closer. "We can't let him have them," she whispered, "no matter what." Noah pressed into her chest, trembling. "But how do we stop him?" She didn't know. They were unarmed, outnumbered. Trapped in a blizzard, caught between killers and something inhuman in the tunnel, her throat tightened painfully, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. We don't fight him with guns, she whispered. We fight him with what he doesn't have. What's that? She lifted the jeweler's journal. The truth. Decision in the snow. Lena rose slowly, pulling Noah up with her. Snow swirled around them, swallowing footprints, erasing trails, turning the world into a blank expanse of white where anything could approach unseen. But she felt stronger now, not because she had a weapon, not because she had a plan, but because she understood the truth Calder feared. The jewels held power beyond wealth. They held guilt, evidence, redemption, and she could do something the Empire never expected: return them. Honor the dead, honor the living, break the cycle. She wasn't a thief. She wasn't a fugitive. She wasn't even a victim anymore. She had a purpose now, and that purpose was stronger than fear. She whispered into Noah's hair, "We're going to finish what the jeweler started." Noah looked up at her, eyes shimmering. "Are we going home?" Lena hugged him tightly, her breath breaking in the storm. "Yes," she said softly, "but not yet." She tightened her grip on the journal. First, they had to escape Calder's siege. Then, they had to survive the snow. Then, they had to return the fortune and set things right. One step at a time. She wiped the tears from her cheeks before they froze. "Come on," she whispered. "We're not staying out here." They crept along the cabin's shadow side, hidden under the storm's veil. The wind roared overhead, smothering footprints and swallowing sound. The men inside shouted something. A door slammed, a window shattered. They were tearing the cabin apart, and they were running out of time. Lena tightened her grip on Noah's hand and whispered the final promise she had left. "We run tonight." She breathed, "because tomorrow we fight back." As the blizzard thickened and danger closed in from every direction, she felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not despair, but resolve. For the first time, the path wasn't about escape. It was about justice, and the jeweler's last lesson burned in her chest like a fragile ember. Be brave enough to let it go. The storm screamed louder as night sank over the valley, smothering the world in shifting white. Lena and Noah crawled deeper into the swirling dark along the side of the cabin, the jeweler's journal tucked beneath Lena's coat like a beating heart. The blizzard wrapped their bodies, swallowing them in a numbing cold that turned every breath into a painful rasp. But Lena didn't slow, not now, not after what she'd read. She clung to Noah with one hand and the truth with the other. The truth that changed everything. The jewels weren't a blessing. They were a burden. A wound carved into generations. And the jeweler's last wish, the plea left behind in those trembling lines of ink, was not for wealth or protection. It was for redemption. Redemption he couldn't finish before the Empire hunted him down. Now it rested on her shoulders, on a single mother who wanted nothing more than a safe home for her son. The weight felt impossible, but so did staying alive long enough to return them. Hiding behind the woodpile, Lena stopped behind the woodpile stacked against the cabin's north wall. The logs rose up like a small barrier, one of the few places the wind didn't reach directly. She crouched behind it with Noah, shielding him with her coat. The woods beyond were black shapes shifting beneath the rising white. The cabin windows glowed faintly with lantern light, and shadows moved inside, Calder's men tearing the place apart. She held Noah close and whispered into his ear, "We stay low, stay quiet, no matter what you hear." "Okay," Noah breathed, teeth chattering. A crash echoed from inside the cabin, then a shout, then boots stomping across the floorboards. "They're looking for us," Noah whispered. "Yes," Lena murmured. "That's why we have to think, not panic." But panic clawed at the edges of her throat anyway, a rising, icy pressure. She forced her breath to steady. "We have something they don't," she whispered. "What hope?" she said softly, and the truth. Noah didn't understand. He didn't need to. He just needed to survive tonight. Calder returns through the storm's veil. A moving silhouette emerged. All steady, unbothered by the blizzard. Lena's heart sank. Calder. He crossed the clearing with calm, controlled steps, flicking snow from his gloves as though it were dust. His coat snapped in the wind, but he moved with the precision of a man who had killed in worse conditions. 2 more men followed behind him. They weren't wandering, they were searching. Calder signaled to his men with a subtle hand movement, and they split off, one circling toward the back of the cabin, the other toward the trees. Noah squeezed Lena's arm painfully. "Mom, don't move," she whispered. Calder approached the front door, opened it with slow deliberation, and stepped inside. The storm swallowed the door after him. Lena ducked lower behind the woodpile, heart pounding. Inside, Calder's voice echoed sharply. "Find the hatch." She had to open it. "We checked it. They're not down there." Then she blocked it. Calder snapped. Another crash. Furniture overturned. Glass shattered. Noah buried his face into Lena's coat. Lena pressed her lips to the top of his head. "Stay with me," she whispered. The jeweler's guilt. A gust of wind ripped through the clearing, scattering loose snow and sending a shiver through the woodpile. The journal thumped against Lena's ribs, reminding her of the weight she carried. Moral, emotional, dangerous. She pulled it out with shaking fingers. She needed to see the jeweler's handwriting again, needed to feel the human pain behind the treasure Calder wanted to weaponize. The next page was smudged, ink running where teardrops had fallen long ago. I was no hero. I believed wealth could save me. I believed leaving the empire made me clean. But blood follows greed. It stains the hands of those who hold it, even if their heart seeks forgiveness. Lena felt the words cut through her. She had been tempted, even for a moment, when she saw the jewels, saw what they could buy. She imagined escape, safety, a new life, a home, a future for Noah. The temptation was real. And that made the jeweler's confession hit harder. If you choose the jewels, you choose the men who hunt them. If you choose the truth, you choose the families who lost everything. Choose wisely. Choose kindness. Choose courage. A lump rose in her throat. The jeweler wasn't speaking to a stranger. He was speaking directly to her. She closed the journal, breath quivering. "I choose Noah," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I choose the truth. I choose to finish what you started." Something inside her settled, a deep, steadying resolve, the kind that didn't shake. Movement in the storm through the rising white. Lena saw the man who'd gone toward the trees return. He was scanning the snow, searching for tracks. He walked closer, closer. Lena pushed Noah down lower behind the woodpile, burying them both in snow. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. The man stopped only a few yards away. He turned slowly, eyes sharp beneath the hood of his coat. And then he took a step toward the woodpile. "Don't breathe." Lena whispered silently, "Don't breathe." The man crouched, studying the ground, studying the shadows. His breath fogged into the storm. Lena closed her eyes. Noah buried his face. A long, terrible moment passed. Then someone shouted from inside the cabin, "Hey, we found something." The man jerked upright and ran back toward the porch. Lena didn't exhale until he vanished through the door. Her breath came out in white, shaking clouds. "We can't stay here," she whispered. Noah nodded desperately. "Where do we go?" he whispered. Lena's mind raced. Not back to the tunnel, not into the forest, not into the open. Then she saw it, a narrow path carved by the storm, snaking toward the old shed near the edge of the clearing, half buried in snow, small, dark, forgotten, but with no windows, no lights, no reason for Calder's men to check it. A hiding place, temporary, but maybe enough. Lena grabbed Noah's hand and leaned close. "We're going to the shed." "Will they see us?" She shook her head. "Not with this storm." She prayed she was right. Crawling through the night, the wind roared, covering their movements as Lena pulled Noah along the snowbank, keeping low. Their legs sank into drifts. Snow soaked through their boots. The cold tore at their skin, but step by step, they made it across the clearing. Her breath hitched each time a shadow moved inside the cabin, each time a man passed a window. Each time a shout erupted, but the storm shielded them, nature's one kindness tonight. They reached the shed, a leaning frame with a rusted door half buried in ice. Lena forced the door open with her shoulder. It groaned softly, but the blizzard swallowed the sound. They slipped inside. Darkness swallowed them whole. Lena shut the door, sealing out the storm. For a moment, they stood in absolute blackness, trembling, breathing hard. Then Noah whispered, "Mom, we're safe." Lena crouched, holding him tightly. "We're hidden," she said. "That's enough for now." Snow battered the shed's roof, wind screamed, shadows flickered across the cabin windows nearby. But they were unseen, for the moment. A decision takes root. Lena leaned against the cold wall, her arms wrapped around Noah, the jeweler's journal pressed between them like a fragile ember of truth. She closed her eyes, forcing her breathing to slow. The jeweler had died running, died hiding, died trying to undo something unforgivable. She wouldn't die like that. She wouldn't let Noah grow up hunted by ghosts, human or otherwise. "We're going to make it out," she whispered. "And we're going to finish what he started." Noah looked up, exhausted but trusting. "How?" Lena opened her eyes. "By living," she whispered, "by doing the right thing, and by not letting fear decide for us." She pressed her forehead to his. "We returned the jewels, all of them." Noah nodded slowly. Outside, a shout rose above the storm. Inside the cabin, boards splintered. Calder's men were widening the hatch. Time was running out, but Lena's decision had already been made. She wasn't hiding forever. Tomorrow, she would rise from this storm with a purpose the Empire feared. A purpose Calder couldn't destroy. A purpose the jeweler died begging someone to honor. As the night deepened and the storm raged, Lena whispered the promise that would define the rest of her life. "I won't let their greed win. Not anymore." And with that vow burning inside her, she closed her eyes and prepared for the final confrontation, still rising on the horizon. The shed trembled beneath the fury of the blizzard, its thin wooden walls creaking as if they might shatter under the weight of the night. Lena held Noah close, listening to the wind claw at the roof, while the jeweler's journal rested against her chest like a silent heartbeat. Every breath she took was shallow, every sound outside sharpened her senses to a painful edge. Calder's men tore through the cabin only a few yards away, their silhouettes slicing across the snow, lit windows like dark blades. They thought she was still hiding inside. They still believed she was trapped under their boots. She wasn't, but she wasn't free either. They were cornered in a shed built for firewood, not survival, and the storm outside was growing worse by the hour. The wind moaned like a wounded animal. Snow hammered down in sheets so thick Lena could barely see the outline of the cabin through the cracks in the boards. Noah shifted in her lap. "Mom, are they going to find the tunnel?" "Yes," she whispered. "Eventually." Noah swallowed hard. "And the thing from below? Is it still coming?" Her silence was all the answer he needed. Lena kissed his forehead. "Listen to me. The people outside. I can fight them. I can outrun them. I can trick them. But what's under that cabin?" Her voice trembled. "We don't know what it is, or how far it will go to get out." Terror widened Noah's eyes, but Lena held his face gently. "That's why we're not waiting anymore," she said, her voice sharpening with resolve. "Tonight is the last night we hide." He clung to her sleeve. "But what are we going to do? Outsmart them?" Lena whispered. "Not fight. Outsmart." She had nothing. No weapons, no allies, no safe ground. But she had something Calder didn't, the truth. The journal, the knowledge of what the jewels really represented. And one detail Calder didn't think she'd notice. The storm was breaking. Even through the shed's walls, the wind carried a shift, subtle but there. A thinning of the storm front, a lightening of the snow, a weakening of the howl. The blizzard had peaked, which meant she had one chance, one narrow window in which darkness would still cloak her. But the storm wouldn't drown her. Lena's breath steadied. When the wind slows, we move, we get to the river. The frozen river, Noah whispered. Yes, but that's where he said he'd catch us. Lena hugged him tight. Exactly. Noah stared at her in confusion. She leaned down, whispering against his ear, "We're not running to avoid Calder. We're running to take him where we need him to be." A shift in the storm. The shed shuddered once, twice, then fell still. The wind no longer screamed, it sighed. Lena lifted her head. The blizzard's roar softened into a heavy snowfall, and snowflakes drifted past the shed's cracks like glittering ash. The storm had begun to break. She stood, adrenaline firing through her limbs with electrifying clarity. "It's time." Noah shuddered. "Mom, I'm scared." She knelt and kissed his cheeks, brushing away the cold tears. "Being scared is what keeps us alive, but acting anyway, that's what makes us strong." He nodded shakily. She cracked the shed door an inch. Snow sparkled under moonlight. Shadows stretched long across the clearing, carving the world into sharp shapes of light and darkness. Calder's men paced across the porch, their silhouettes rigid and impatient. "Where the hell is she?" One barked. "We found the tunnel," another replied. "Tracks end at the opening." "Then she's in the woods," a third said. Calder's voice cut through them with cold precision. "Fan out. She won't get far, and if she does, she'll freeze." Lena's breath caught. The men spread out. Perfect, exactly what she needed. She turned to Noah. "Stay behind me, and don't make a sound." He nodded. Lena pushed the shed door open and slipped into the night with the silent grace of a hunted animal who suddenly remembered she still had claws. The path to the river snow crunched softly beneath their boots as they ducked behind the tool racks and woodpiles lining the clearing. Lena moved fast, navigating darkness like she'd been born in it, her senses sharpened by fear, survival, and purpose. The cabin loomed to the left, full of angry light and the pounding chaos of men searching for a ghost. The trees rustled faintly to the right, deep and foreboding, but ahead a faint glimmer, the river. Frozen solid, a white sheet stretching across the valley like a shimmering mirror, catching moonlight between shreds of storm. Lena gripped Noah's hand and hurried toward it. Every step was agony. Every shadow was a threat. Every gust of wind whispered danger, but she didn't stop. When they reached the river's edge, Noah gasped, "Mom, it's beautiful." It was, terrifying and beautiful. The ice rippled with faint cracks beneath a thin layer of snow, but the surface was thick, solid enough to cross, but fragile enough to break under weight. Lena knelt beside Noah, gripping his face gently. "Remember this," she whispered. "If anything happens, you run across the river. Don't look back." "No," Noah whispered, tears forming. "I'm not leaving you." Her heart cracked. "You won't have to," she said. "But if I fall, you run." Noah nodded, choking on fear. Lena stood, and from behind, a voice cut through the wind. "Well, that didn't take long." She froze. Noah gasped. Calder Knox stepped out of the tree line behind them, coat dusted in snow, gun in hand, eyes sharp as knives. Moonlight carved his face into a mask of cold mastery. Flanked by two men, Lena turned slowly, pulling Noah behind her. Calder smiled. "You led us farther than I expected, but I knew you'd run here. Criminals always run toward water." "I'm not a criminal," Lena hissed. "No," Calder said calmly, "but the man who built that vault was." He raised the gun slightly, not aiming, posturing. "You opened the chest." Calder continued. "You saw what's inside. Did you take anything?" Lena's throat tightened. He stepped closer. "You did." A knowing smirk spread across his face. "You took the journal." Lena's grip tightened around Noah's hand. "Smart woman," Calder said. "That book is worth more to me than the jewels. It's the one piece that can either rebuild the empire or burn it down." Lena's breath faltered. "You're going to give it to me," Calder said, raising his gun fully now. "And you're going to do it now." Lena stepped backward toward the frozen river. No, she said quietly. Calder's eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no. Wind flowed between them like a sharp blade. You can take the money. Lena whispered. The gems, the chests, everything. She lifted the journal. But you will not take this. Calder's jaw clenched. Oh, I will. No, Lena said again, voice steady and razor sharp. You won't, because I'm finally choosing to do what the jeweler couldn't. She took another step back. Onto the ice. Calder's eyes widened. Don't be stupid. Lena shook her head. I'm being brave. The ice groaned beneath her boots. Noah whimpered. Calder lifted the gun higher. Step off the river, Lena. Her heart thundered. This was it. The moment everything broke or everything changed, and the night of reckoning began. As the moon rose higher, and the frozen river whispered beneath her feet, Lena breathed in the sharp, unforgiving air and whispered, "This ends tonight." For a heartbeat, time froze with her. Lena stood at the river's edge, boots pressed to the groaning skin of the ice, one arm drawn protectively behind her where Noah clung to her coat. Calder's gun stared at her like a single unblinking eye. Snow drifted between them in slow, soundless spirals, catching in the pale light of a sky that was finally, slowly, starting to clear. "This ends tonight," she said, and the words didn't tremble. Calder's eyes narrowed, cold and calculating. "Careful what you wish for." One of his men shifted to the right, another to the left, the three of them forming a crescent that penned her against the frozen river. The cabin, wounded and glowing behind them, watched in silence. Windows cracked, door ajar, its secrets ripped open. Lena could feel the ice beneath her feet, the deep shudder of slow, moving water hidden under layers of winter. It was strong enough to hold her and Noah, but three men with guns maybe not. Calder tilted his head, gaze flicking briefly to the journal in her hand. "You know what that book holds," he said. "Names, transactions, proof. Enough to burn men far above anything you can imagine. Hand it over and this gets simple." "You mean quiet," Lena said. He smiled faintly. "Quiet is a kind of kindness. Not for the families he wrote about," she said, voice hardening. "The ones you ruined and left with nothing." His smile thinned. "He told you that. He didn't have to," she replied. His handwriting shook with guilt. "Yours doesn't." Calder's eyes sharpened, impressed despite himself. "You read fast." I listened faster. The river groaned beneath the snow, a low, hollow warning. Calder took one step forward. Snow compressed under his boot with a soft crunch. "You're outnumbered, outgunned, and one bad step away from drowning," he said calmly. "You have something very valuable that doesn't belong to you. Do the sensible thing, Lena. Give me the journal. Give me the keys. Walk away with your son and forget this place ever existed." Noah's fingers dug into the back of her coat. Lena's chest heaved once, then stilled. "You're right," she said. His brows lifted slightly. "I do have something that doesn't belong to me," she went on, "and I am going to give it back." She raised the journal just enough so the leather caught the moonlight. "But not to you." The smallest of his men, broad-shouldered, impatient, snorted. "Enough of this," he muttered, raising his gun. "We can grab the kid, let her watch, and—" Calder's arm snapped out, blocking him. "No," he said quietly, gaze never leaving Lena's face. "She's not stupid. She came here on purpose. Ask yourself why she chose the river." The man hesitated, gun wavering slightly. "Because she's cornered." "No," Calder replied. "Because she's playing with weight." The ice creaked again, a slow, aching sound that vibrated up Lena's bones. She took another step backward. The ice answered with a long, low crack somewhere beneath the snow. Calder's eyes flicked down, his jaw tightened. "Enough games. You brought men," Lena said quietly. "Guns, threats, all that weight." She nodded toward the river. "You know what happens when too much of it steps onto the wrong place." Calder's gaze flicked to Noah, then back to her. You'd risk your son. I'd risk myself, she said. But I'm not the one who came here tonight planning to kill a child to protect a pile of blood money. That's you. His face didn't move, but his fingers tightened around the gun. Behind him, from the direction of the cabin, a glow brightened suddenly. Orange, hungry. Smoke rose from the chimney, too thick, too fast, carrying sparks with it. The taller of his men cursed, the fires spreading. Lena's heart hammered. She had known the old chimney was brittle, half choked with creosote and soot. She'd known how quickly it would catch if she overloaded the hearth on her way out. One last roaring blaze, rags, oil, a log pushed too far in. Now the cabin's roofline flickered with heat. Fire began licking along the eaves, faint but undeniable, painting the snow in restless orange. You did this, Calder said calmly. You did, Lena countered. You're the one who tore through walls with lanterns burning. Either way, someone will see it. Smoke like that doesn't go unnoticed in a place this empty. Rangers, highway patrol, someone will come. His jaw clenched. Not soon enough, maybe not for me, she said, but for you, for a man standing over an opened vault, surrounded by stolen restitution, holding a gun on a woman and a kid at the edge of a river. His silence said everything. She took another step back. The crack beneath the ice sounded louder this time. Closer, more like a warning tearing across glass. The impatient man swore again. We're wasting time. You're running out of it. Lena cut in. You can chase us, or you can try to save what you came here for before the roof collapses and melts it into the river. But you can't do both. Calder's gaze flared, sharp calculations sparking behind his eyes. He wasn't afraid of killing her. He was terrified of losing what was beneath that cabin. You think I can't have both? He asked quietly. I think you've been underestimating one thing all night, Lena said. For the first time, he looked genuinely curious. What's that? She met his stare, steady and unbroken. How far I'm willing to go because I'm not afraid of letting it all go. Before he could answer, she lifted the journal high over the ice. His eyes snapped to it. So did his men's. Put it down, Calder said sharply. This, she asked, and then, without letting herself think, without letting the tremor in her stomach stall her hand, she hurled the journal behind her. It hit the ice and slid, skittering across snow until it stopped a dozen yards out, lying like a dark stain on the white. All three men jolted forward. The ice groaned, louder now, complaining under the shift of weight pressing toward the center. Calder raised his free hand slightly, halting his men. Only his breath and the distant roar of the cabin fire filled the air. That was a mistake, he murmured. Maybe, Lena said. Maybe not. You still need it. I don't. She stepped sideways, drawing Noah with her, keeping her boots near the edge where reeds and frozen mud braced the ice. Calder stared at the book, at her, at the fire glowing behind him. He knew what that journal meant. Without it, the jewels were just stones. With it, they were a confession, a blueprint, a noose. One of his men spat into the snow. I'll get it, he muttered, stepping onto the ice. No, Calder snapped. Too late, the man took 3 quick strides. Crack, a sharp, bright sound split the air. He froze. The ice beneath him spiderwebbed in all directions, lines radiating out from his boots like shattered glass. Don't move, Calder warned. The man's breath hitched. It's fine. The ice slumped with a dull, sickening sound. Then, in one terrible instant, it gave way. Water exploded upward as his body plunged through. A strangled scream ripped from his throat before the dark river swallowed it. For a moment, his hands flailed on the edge of the broken sheet, fingers clawing for purchase on the slick surface. Help, he choked. Help me, Calder lunged forward on instinct, then stopped himself abruptly at the brink. The remaining man surged toward the hole, but Calder's arm slammed across his chest, stopping him. Don't, Calder hissed. You'll both go in. The drowning man's eyes rolled wild with terror. The cold tore the strength from his muscles faster than panic could power them. His grasp slipped. His hands vanished. The river's black surface roiled once, twice, then went still, chunks of ice bumping gently against each other like a closing mouth. Noah buried his face against Lena's back. Her heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Calder stared at the hole, jaw clenched, the stormlight turning his face into a mask carved from stone. "This is what your empire does," Lena said softly. "It eats its own." His eyes snapped back to hers, flaring with a rage that finally burned hot enough to crack his composure. "Enough," he said, voice like a knife sliding from a sheath. "You want to play martyr? Fine, but the boy doesn't have to." He raised the gun. "Give me the keys. Tell me where the rest is. I leave you his mother in story only, or I leave him without a mother at all. Decide." Noah's fingers dug harder into her coat, but he didn't make a sound. Lena's mind flashed through everything: the apartment, the bruised nights, the listing that shouldn't have existed, the hearth that remembered, the knocking from below, the man who died trying to undo his sins. She had run her whole life from fear, from fists, from failure, from the belief that she was always one bad decision away from losing everything. Now, there was no more room left to run, only room to stand. "No," she said again, "you don't get to decide what happens to him. I do." Calder took a slow step forward. The ice grumbled. "And what do you decide?" he asked, almost curious. "That this ends with you exposed," she said. "Not me." She took a breath and shouted suddenly, voice slamming into the cold air, "Hey, down here." Her words tore across the valley, punching through the hiss of snow and the roar of fire in the cabin. They echoed off the trees, off the mountains, off the frozen river itself. Calder's eyes widened in confusion. "What are you?" From somewhere up the ridge, faint but undeniable, came an answering sound. A far-off mechanical whine, then a faint, piercing whoop of a siren. Noah's head snapped up. Calder's face drained of color. "You set a fire," Lena said, breath shuddering. In an old cabin with a history and a lonely highway nearby, someone saw the ranger station, the road crews, maybe some hunter, I don't know. I just knew somebody would. The silhouette of a distant truck appeared between the trees, headlights cutting through the fading storm. "You think they'll believe whatever story you make up?" she asked, "when they find me and my son with nothing in our hands but frostbite, and you with guns, an open vault, and a list of crimes written in the jeweler's own ink?" Calder's gaze flicked toward the headlights. Back to her, to the journal glinting faintly out on the fractured ice. She could see the calculation in his face shift. Options closing like doors in a burning hallway. He snapped the gun toward her. Decision made. "Then we change the story," he snarled. "It ends with a tragic accident on the river." He stepped forward. The ice answered, not with a crack this time, with a roar. The sheet beneath him heaved, then split wide, the fractures she'd been teasing with every backward step finally connecting. A jagged, yawning line tore open beneath his boots, and the river lunged upward with a violent rush. For a split second, his eyes met hers, shock and fury flaring together. Then he went under. The gun flew from his hand, spinning across the ice toward Lena's feet. Cold water swallowed him whole, the broken edges of the river slamming back together like closing jaws. "Mom!" Noah screamed. Lena didn't think. She dropped to her knees, shoving Noah to the bank. "Stay there." The hole still churned, Calder's coat flashing once beneath the surface before disappearing again. The current sucked at him relentlessly, hungrily, dragging him deeper. Lena lay flat on her stomach, stretching her arm toward the black fracture. "Calder!" No answer. Another second ticked by. Then His hand burst out of the water, slamming against the edge of the ice. His fingers slipped. "Take it," Lena shouted, grabbing his wrist in both hands. His grip was ice, cold, weak but still there. He coughed violently, choking on river water, breath tearing ragged from his chest. "You stupid," he gasped. "You should have let me." "Shut up and hold on," she snapped through gritted teeth. The ice whined, threatening to break again under the strain. Water soaked her sleeves, burning her arms with a cold that felt like knives. On the riverbank, Noah sobbed. "Mom, let go." He tried to. "He's not dying like that," Lena shouted, muscles screaming. "Not while I'm here." For a heartbeat, she flashed on the jeweler. Alone in this valley, hunted, dying with no one to witness his final choice. She wouldn't repeat that ending, not even for a man like Calder. Because if she let him drown now, his story would end as a mystery in icy water. But if she pulled him out, he would face the one thing men like him feared more than death: accountability. Lena braced her boots against the edge of the bank and hauled with everything she had left. Calder's shoulders broke the surface, then his chest, his gasping face contorted with pain and rage and something like disbelief. Behind them, the siren grew louder. Headlights washed across the trees. "Lena," he coughed, voice shredded, "if you think." She yanked him fully onto the ice, then shoved him toward the bank, the gun now lying well within her reach. She grabbed it before he could. By the time he realized it, he was on his back in the snow, heaving for breath, soaked and shivering. Lena stood over him, gun in both hands, arms shaking but steady enough. She pointed it straight at him. "Don't move," she said. His remaining man raised his own weapon on instinct. But headlights swung into the clearing at that exact second, blinding them all in a wash of white. "State Patrol," a voice boomed from the truck. "Drop your weapons. Hands up." Everything happened at once. The last man spun toward the lights. Lena angled the gun downward, flinging it away from all of them, letting it slide across the snow until it disappeared in a drift. Her hands shot into the air. Calder tried to push himself up, but his limbs shook violently from the cold and the river's merciless grip. He collapsed back into the snow, chest heaving, too weak to rise. More lights, more doors slamming, boots pounding over snow, hands where I can see them. "Step away from him, ma'am. You on the ground. Now." Lena let the shouts wash over her like distant thunder. She stepped back, raising her fists higher, the cold finally tearing through the last of her adrenaline. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she locked them, refusing to fall. Noah scrambled down the bank, hands up too, voice breaking. "Please, please don't hurt my mom. He's the bad one, not her. He's easy, kid." One of the officers said, voice softer as he reached him, "Easy, you're okay, we've got you." Lena's chest cracked open at the sight. Noah bundled into someone else's arms, shaking but alive. Safe, really, finally, actually safe. She swallowed hard, tears burning hot despite the cold. Officers swarmed around Calder, barking commands, cuffing his wrists behind his back, rolling him onto his side as he coughed up river water and curses. "Calder Knox," one of them said sharply, "you're under arrest." Lena watched his face as the words landed. No defiance, no swagger, just a flicker of something small and human beneath the wreckage of his pride. He met her eyes once more. "You think this ends it?" he rasped. "No," Lena said quietly, voice calm now. "This is just the part where you stop deciding who suffers and who doesn't." One of the officers approached her. "Ma'am, can you walk?" She nodded, legs numb but holding. "Yes. We're gonna need statements," he said, gentle but firm. "There's a fire, an illegal vault under that cabin, and a whole lot we don't understand. Can you explain any of it?" Lena looked past him, past the cabin's wounded shell, past the river's cracked surface, past the headlights cutting through the fragile end of the storm. She thought of the jeweler's journal lying out on the ice, pages full of names and sins and a map of stolen lives. She thought of the chests beneath the floor, the jewels, the weight, the possibility of making it right. "I can," she said softly, "but it's a long story." He nodded. "We've got time." She wrapped an arm around Noah, pulling him close, feeling his warmth through the layers of cold. "Then I'll tell you," she whispered, more to herself than anyone, "all of it." As officers moved to secure the cabin and the first faint light of dawn brushed the horizon, Lena felt the night loosen its grip on her throat. The reckoning had come and gone. Calder was in chains, the cabin still smoked, the jewels still waited beneath its floor, and the weight of what she had to do next, what the jeweler had begged someone to do, settled gently into her hands. As the sky slowly brightened over the frozen river, she realized this battle was over. But the journey to return what was never hers was only just beginning. Dawn came slowly, as if the sky itself needed time to understand what had happened during the night. Soft gold filtered across the snowfield, brushing the broken river ice with a fragile warmth that felt almost unreal. The storm had passed, the danger had passed, and for the first time since stepping foot inside that cursed cabin, Lena's heart breathed without fear twisting inside her chest. The officers had driven Calder away before sunrise, shivering, defeated, stripped of the cold authority he once wore like armor. His men were taken too, each one shackled and silent, their footprints already filling with drifting snow, as if the world wanted to erase them. But Lena didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired, hollow in places she didn't know she had inside her, grateful, relieved, but heavier somehow, weighted with what waited beneath the cabin, in the vault she had uncovered and protected at the risk of her own life. Now, as she stood beside the ranger's truck wrapped in a thick emergency blanket, Noah leaning sleepily against her hip, the sun sliding up over the mountains felt like a quiet invitation, a beginning. The ranger approached softly, careful not to startle them. "We're almost finished inside," he said gently. "Is there anything you want before we seal the property?" Lena looked toward the cabin, the place that had nearly swallowed her and Noah whole. Its roof sagged with fire damage. Smoke curled in thin wisps from the edges of the chimney. A window pane had shattered during the chaos, leaving a jagged smile in the glass. Yet for all its scars, it stood tall in the dawn light, stubborn and proud. "What do you mean, seal it?" she asked, for safety. The ranger replied, "Between the fire damage and the structural issues under the floor, it needs to be examined. And, well," he hesitated, "we saw the vault." Lena's breath hitched. "And," he softened, "we'll document it, but we won't move anything until we understand what it is. You reported what you found. That helps your case. You've been honest the whole way." Her eyes dropped to Noah's hand tucked inside hers. "It wasn't mine to hide." The ranger gave her a warm, tired look. Not many people would have said that. Not many people would have survived the night long enough to have the chance. He nodded once, then stepped away, leaving her to the quiet. Noah lifted his head. His voice was soft, raspy from cold and exhaustion. "Mom, are we leaving?" Lena bent and kissed the top of his hair. "Yes, baby, we're going home." But as soon as she spoke the word home, something in her chest shifted. Home wasn't the broken apartment she'd fled. Home wasn't the cabin where secrets festered beneath the floor. Home wasn't in running from place to place, chasing survival like smoke. Home was safety, peace, honesty, and maybe something she had yet to build. She pulled Noah closer. "We're going somewhere warm first," she whispered, "somewhere safe, but after that, we have a journey to take." His tired eyes lifted. "A journey," she nodded slowly. to return something important. The jeweler's words echoed through her as clearly as if he whispered them into the dawn. This is not treasure. It is restitution. Be brave enough to let it go. Lena swallowed the emotion rising in her throat. Someone has to give back what was stolen. Someone has to finish what he started. Who? Noah asked softly. Us. Lena said. We'll do it together. He blinked, then nodded, exhausted but trusting, as he always had been. Okay. The first mile they rode with the patrol toward town, the snowy road winding slowly between fir trees glazed with ice. Noah fell asleep almost instantly, head pressed to Lena's shoulder, small hand still clinging to her fingers, as if afraid she'd slip away. Lena watched the trees blur past, her reflection faint in the frosted window. She barely recognized herself, eyes bruised from sleeplessness, hair tangled from the storm, mouth set in a firm line she didn't know she possessed. But beneath all that rawness, she looked stronger, steadier, like someone who had walked through darkness and refused to bow her head. She shifted her coat, feeling the journal tucked safely inside. It would be long hours before she could start the task it asked of her. Long days, maybe longer, but she didn't feel intimidated. She felt ready. No questions. The ranger asked from the driver's seat, peeking at her through the mirror. Thousands, Lena said softly, but I'm too tired to ask any right now. He chuckled. Understandable. We'll get you set up in town for a few days. There's a safe house for emergency winter displacements. You'll be warm, you'll have food, and after the paperwork. He hesitated. You can go wherever you need to. She nodded slowly. Thank you. A faint awe tugged at his features. Not many people would stand against a man like that, he said, especially alone. I wasn't alone, Lena replied. I had Noah, and I had the truth. He nodded once, deeply. You did good, Lena. You did right. The words pressed warmth into her chest, small and healing. She turned back to the window, letting the soft, golden morning brush her face. The storm had broken. The danger was gone, and ahead, somewhere past this quiet road, past this small mountain town, past the fear that had clung to her life like a second skin, were the families the jeweler wrote about. The ones who deserved to be made whole, one gem at a time, one truth at a time, one act of courage at a time. A hotel room and a new kind of quiet. By mid-morning, they reached town. A cluster of warm lights and winter smoke nestled against the mountains. The patrol officers escorted them to a small inn, where a kind woman named Helen hurried to bring blankets, soup, and a room with a working heater. Noah collapsed into the bed, asleep before Lena even tucked him in. The room was quiet, too quiet at first. After all she'd endured, the storms, the chases, the vault, the screams, silence felt unreal, like it didn't belong in the world she knew, but slowly, gently, she settled into it. She sat at the small wooden table in their room, the jeweler's journal resting before her. Its leather cover was cracked at the edges. Its corners were burned. Its pages held guilt and grief, and the final heartbeat of a dying man's courage. Lena opened it again, feeling his voice rise from the ink. Names filled one page, addresses filled another, notes about widows, children, families who had lost everything. She traced the shaky handwriting with her fingertips. These were the people the jewels belonged to. These were the people she would find, not out of heroism, not out of glory, not even out of obligation, but because she knew the weight of injustice, and she wouldn't let it continue. She whispered softly into the quiet room, I promise, I'll take them home. The heater hummed softly. Snow fell gently outside. Noah breathed in steady, peaceful rhythms. For the first time in her adult life, Lena felt something she hadn't known in years. Purpose, not survival, not fear. Purpose. She closed the journal, warmed her trembling hands around a cup of tea Helen had left, and watched the first afternoon sun melt the frost off the window. Tomorrow she would begin. Tomorrow she would open the vault again, with officers present with safety assured, and gather each jewel destined for someone who never knew why their ancestors' stories ended in loss. Tomorrow she would become the courier of restitution, the last piece in a broken man's redemption. But tonight she rested, with Noah breathing softly beside her, with warmth finally surrounding them, with the rising knowledge that she had changed the story, not only hers, but the jeweler's, and the stories of families she had yet to meet. As the room dimmed into evening and peace settled over her like a soft blanket, Lena whispered into the quiet, "We're not done, Noah, but for the first time, we're safe." And in that fragile, beautiful calm, she drifted into a sleep made of hope instead of fear, the kind of sleep that marks the beginning of a new chapter. Morning rose gently over the small mountain town, brushing the snowy rooftops in soft gold, as if trying not to wake them too quickly. Lena stirred before Noah did, blinking into the quiet room with a calm she wasn't used to. No pounding footsteps, no voices hunting her, no cold pressing at the underside of a hatch. Just silence, real silence. She slipped from the bed carefully, tucking the blankets around Noah's shoulders. He murmured but didn't wake. His face, usually tight with worry, looked young again, peaceful as it should have always been. Lena stood by the window, watching soft flakes drift lazily past the glass. Each one caught the sunlight, glowing for a moment before disappearing. It felt symbolic, fleeting, beautiful, like the end of a nightmare. She placed a hand against the window and whispered to herself, "It's time." The second return to the cabin, an officer named Carter drove them back to the cabin after breakfast. Helen had packed Noah a muffin, which he ate silently, eyes fixed on the snowy road winding through the forest. When they reached the cabin clearing, Lena inhaled sharply. The place looked different in daylight, different in peace. The fire's aftermath was visible. Charred edges along the roofline, windows blackened, the scent of smoke lingering. But the cabin itself stood whole. Wounded but not broken, much like her, several officers milled around, taking notes, photographing, measuring. A detective lifted an eyebrow as they approached. "You ready?" he asked gently. Lena nodded. "As I'll ever be." With careful steps, she and Noah entered the cabin. The warmth of the sunlight falling through the broken window softened the destruction inside. The room with the hatch looked less menacing. The boards were still scorched around its edges, but the darkness below no longer felt like an enemy. The hatch waited opened, stabilized, lit, guarded, a vault no longer meant to trap, but to reveal. Officer Carter gestured politely. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am." Lena gripped Noah's hand, took a breath so deep it reached the place inside her that still trembled, and descended the ladder with him. The cold of the vault hit immediately, but she didn't flinch this time. It wasn't the cold of fear anymore. It was the cold of buried truth. The lanterns the officers had placed glowed warmly, chasing the shadows from the metal walls. The three chests sat exactly where she'd left them, silent sentinels of an empire that had swallowed generations. But today they would be opened for the right reasons. Lena crouched before the first chest, the one cracked enough to reveal diamonds like frozen stars. She lifted the lid fully. The officers audibly inhaled behind her. She reached in. Jewels cold as ice touched her fingertips. One stone at a time, she lifted them, placing each into the velvet-lined evidence case officers had provided. Noah stood beside her, helping her count each piece, though his hands shook slightly each time he lifted one. "It's okay," Lena murmured. "They're not cursed, they're just heavy." "Everything felt cursed here," Noah whispered. She smiled softly. "Not anymore." Then they moved to the second chest. This one was heavier, filled with documents packed in wax-lined bundles. Lena lifted the first one carefully. It cracked softly as she unfolded it. Names, dates, transactions, locations, ledgers of the empire's rise built on stolen wealth. It was paper, but it felt heavier than gold. Officers handled each sheet reverently, whispering to one another about the implications. It wasn't just restitution, it was evidence, a woven truth that could bring legal closure to families far beyond Montana. Then they reached the third chest, the smallest, the most intimate. Lena lifted the lid, and the scent of aged velvet and tarnished metal drifted into the air. Delicate jewelry, brooches, rings, pendants, gleamed under the lanterns. Noah reached out and touched one, a small sapphire ring. "Mom," he whispered, "do you think the person who lost this missed it?" Lena's breath caught. "I think," she said softly, "they missed what it represented: safety, stability, love, possibility." He looked up at her with wounded eyes, like we did. Her throat tightened. "Yes, honey, exactly like we did." They catalogued every piece, every name, every story the jeweler meant to restore. By noon, the vault was empty of jewels, but full of purpose. First delivery, the woman by the window. The officers arranged temporary custody rights for Lena, under supervision, to transport the first set of jewels to the nearest family on the jeweler's list, a woman in her 70s named Marion Delacroix. They drove 2 hours to her small farmhouse, where Lena stepped out holding a sealed envelope containing Marion's share. A garnet necklace and a letter from the jeweler written decades ago, but never delivered. Lena's hands trembled as she approached the door. Noah held the hem of her coat. The door opened slowly, revealing a frail woman with silver hair and weary eyes. "Yes?" Marion asked, voice soft. Lena swallowed. "Mrs. Delacroix, my name is Lena Hart. I came to give you something that belonged to your family." She extended the envelope. Marion hesitated, confusion clouding her face, then slowly opened it. Her breath hitched. The garnet necklace slid into her trembling palm, the deep red stone catching the winter sunlight like ember flame. Her eyes filled instantly. "My mother," she whispered. "She always told me it was taken, by a man she trusted. She said no one believed her." Lena blinked away tears. She was telling the truth. Marion pressed the necklace to her chest, her shoulders shaking. "You brought it home," she whispered, "after all these years." "Yes," Lena said softly, "and there are more, to others, families like yours." Marion reached out and took Lena's hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," she said, voice breaking, "for being the one who didn't take, but returned." Lena pressed her lips together, unable to speak. When they returned to the car, Noah squeezed her hand. "Mom," he whispered, "you made her smile." Lena bent and kissed his hair. "We're going to make a lot of people smile." The journey continues over the next 2 days. Lena followed the jeweler's list with Noah beside her. Each stop brought tears, disbelief, gratitude, and closure long overdue. A widower in Idaho received a sapphire brooch that belonged to his grandmother. A retired teacher in Spokane held a ruby pendant that had vanished before she was born. A young woman in Billings cried as Lena placed a diamond earring, one of a pair, into her hands, the only inheritance her mother had been robbed of. At each home, Lena saw the same emotions rise: shock, heartbreak, healing. The jewels weren't solving their lives, they weren't erasing the past, but they were mending something inside them that had gone silent for too long. And with each delivery, Lena felt something inside herself mend too. Piece by piece, heart by heart, truth by truth. The weight she'd been carrying grew lighter. The guilt she didn't deserve slipped away. The fear that had shadowed her life for years faded into something softer. Purpose, hope. By the 5th delivery, Noah's eyes sparkled more than they had in years. By the 7th, he started smiling. By the 8th, he laughed, a small laugh barely there, but a laugh, Lena had to turn away so he wouldn't see the tears flood her eyes. They were becoming themselves again, not victims, not survivors, just people, returning what wasn't theirs, creating something good out of something terrible. An ending and a beginning on the drive to the next house. Noah leaned against her shoulder, sleepy and warm, the winter sunlight streaking across his face in golden stripes. "Mom," he murmured, "yes, when we're done, when all the jewels are home, can we have a home too?" Her breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. "We will, I promise you, Noah, we will." He smiled, eyes drifting shut. She rested her cheek on his head as the mountains rolled past them, and the last embers of a terrible storm faded into memory. They were almost at the end, almost at the final house, almost at the last name on the jeweler's trembling list. And as the car curved toward the setting sun, Lena realized something powerful. This journey wasn't about the jewels. It was about healing, hers, Noah's, and the families who had been forgotten. She exhaled softly, feeling warmth rise in her chest. As the evening light softened across the snow, she whispered to herself. She realized the story wasn't ending, it was transforming. And the road opened before her like a promise. After weeks on the road, returning the last piece of the jeweler's sorrowful fortune, Lena felt something unfamiliar settle over her, a quiet so soft it almost frightened her. Not the silence of danger, not the silence of waiting for footsteps outside a door, but the silence of peace, real peace, the kind that fills the air when a long journey finally exhales. Snow fell in lazy spirals as she and Noah drove toward the small town where they planned to rebuild, not because they were forced to stay, not because they had nowhere else to go, but because for the first time they could choose, and this valley, this gentle winter, soft valley felt like the right place to begin again. Noah leaned his head against the window, watching the world glide by in a blur of white pines and soft hills. He looked older now, taller somehow, not in age, but in resilience, in what he had carried with her, in what he had survived. "Are we really done?" he asked quietly. Lena squeezed the steering wheel, her heart catching at the innocence in his voice. "Yes, sweetheart, we're done. And the jewels, all of them," she nodded. Every last one found its home. Noah breathed out, fogging the glass. "Feels strange, like I keep expecting something else to happen." "I know," she murmured. "I felt it too, but nothing's coming for us anymore. No men in the trees, no secrets under the floor. We did our part, and now we get to live our lives again." He smiled softly, eyes drifting back to the landscape. I liked the sound of that. So did she. Arriving at their NEW home, they pulled into a quiet neighborhood at the far end of town. Modest houses dusted with snow, each with warm lights glowing behind frosted windows. A kind realtor named Annie had secured a small rental cabin for them. Nothing extravagant, nothing eerie. Just a warm little place with a front porch, sturdy walls, and a fireplace that didn't hide secrets. Lena parked the car and turned off the engine. Silence washed over them, the kind that came when a chapter truly ended. "This is it," she whispered. Noah unbuckled slowly, peering through the windshield at the little cabin with its simple wooden steps and freshly shoveled path. "It looks safe," he said. Safe, that was all they needed. They stepped out of the car, boots crunching softly in the snow. The cold bit lightly at their cheeks, but it wasn't the same cold that once crept under floorboards or hissed through hidden tunnels. This was the good kind, the kind that made warm rooms feel warmer. Lena unlocked the door. It creaked open softly. Warmth spilled out, a heater humming, soft winter light glowing across plain wooden floors, a small table, 2 chairs, a sofa, and a fireplace made of smooth river stones. Noah rushed inside, running his fingers over the arm of the sofa, the smooth wooden table, the little shelf lined with books from the previous tenant. "Mom, look," he whispered. "There are no cold patches, no weird sounds, no Anything? Lena stepped inside slowly, her heart swelling. No secrets, she said softly, just home. Noah took off his jacket and twirled once in the open space. I love it, Lena laughed, light, real, full. It startled her with how natural it felt. She closed the door behind them, locked it, and felt her shoulders relax for the first time in what felt like years. A moment of stillness she unpacked slowly, savoring the simple rhythm of placing their few belongings onto shelves and hooks. When she reached into the box and felt the small cloth pouch with the single gemstone she had kept, the one piece the jeweler had set aside for the carrier of the truth, she paused. She rolled the gem between her fingers, feeling its warmth catch the light. Not for wealth, not for power, but as a reminder of courage, of choice, of the long winter they survived, and the people who would never know her name, but would forever feel the ripple of her actions. She placed the gem on the mantel above the fireplace. Then she gathered wood from the small stack by the door, arranged the pieces carefully, and struck a match. Flame bloomed, soft, golden, gentle. Firelight danced across the room, filling the cabin with warmth that felt almost alive. Noah curled onto the sofa, pulling a blanket around his shoulders. Mom, this feels like the beginning of something. Lena sat beside him, tucking the blanket tighter around them both. It does, doesn't it? He leaned his head against her arm. Do you think this is our final home? She kissed the top of his hair. I think it's our first real one. Outside, snow continued falling, soft and slow. But inside, there was warmth. A different warmth than fire alone could make. A warmth built of safety, truth, and the long journey they had endured together. They weren't running anymore. They weren't hiding. They weren't haunted by riches that weren't theirs. They were here, starting again. Lena closed her eyes, letting the crackle of the fire settle into her heart like a lullaby. For the first time since stepping foot into the Montana wilderness, she felt the future opening in front of her like a sunrise. As the firelight shimmered across the mantel, catching the small gem and sending tiny sparks of light across the room, Lena breathed deeply and whispered, "We made it, Noah, and this time, the story is truly ours." In that quiet glow, surrounded by the warmth of a life finally beginning, she felt the truth settle gently into her bones. The storm was over, the past was buried, and the embers of a new life were finally rising. The fire crackled gently that evening, casting waves of golden warmth across the little cabin. Outside, snow drifted down like feathers shaken from a quiet winter sky, each flake settling softly against the windowpane. The world felt hushed, peaceful in a way Lena had never known, a way she feared she never would, but now, here she was, safe, warm, beginning again. Noah sat cross-legged on the rug, building a small tower of wooden blocks Helen had surprised him with before they left town. The firelight played across his face, brushing his cheeks with soft amber glow. For the first time in a long time, he looked like a child, not a survivor, not a boy hiding his fear behind forced bravery. Just Noah. Lena watched him, her chest tightening with emotion she could finally allow herself to feel. "Mom," he said, glancing up as if sensing her gaze. "Yes, do you think we'll stay here for a long time?" She closed her eyes briefly, letting the warmth seep into her bones. "As long as we want," she said quietly, "as long as it feels right." He smiled, small, hopeful, but real. "I like that." She crossed the room and knelt beside him, cupping his cheek. "Me too." The first night without fear night settled around the cabin like a comforting blanket. After dinner, simple soup and bread, they curled together on the sofa beneath a thick quilt. Noah fell asleep quickly, head resting on her lap, his breaths soft and steady. Lena brushed her fingers through his hair, letting the rhythm of the fire settle inside her. It was strange, this softness. Stranger still was the absence of fear. For so long, nights meant danger, nights meant listening for footsteps, nights meant planning an escape, even if she had nowhere to run. But tonight, she listened only to the crackle of flame, the quiet sigh of settling logs, the steady heartbeat of a home unburdened by secrets. Her thoughts drifted back to the jeweler's vault, to the cold metal, the gleaming gems, the confessions inked by shaking hands. She thought of the families who now had closure, the ones who welcomed her with tears, the ones who embraced Noah as if he had been part of the healing too. What a strange, beautiful thing, how one man's guilt, another man's greed, and a mother's desperation had intertwined into a path that led here, to warmth, to safety, to beginnings she never imagined. The gem on the mantel caught the firelight again, throwing tiny sparks across the stone wall like scattered stars. Lena smiled, not a smile of triumph, not a smile of relief, but a smile of knowing, of understanding that what she chose mattered. That doing the right thing had changed more than the world around her. It had changed her. A letter to herself when Noah was tucked safely in bed. Lena sat at the small wooden table with a cup of tea warming her hands. The quiet was gentle, not heavy. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, a single torn page from the back of the jeweler's journal, the only page she had kept for herself. Its edges were rough, its writing smudged, but the words still shone through. If someone finds peace after me, let it be enough. Let the flame that outlives me warm hands that deserve gentleness. Let the burden end, and let a new beginning rise where I could not stay. Lena laid her fingers over the words, gentleness, burden ended, a new beginning. She folded the note and tucked it into the drawer of the table, sealing it inside a place where it could rest, just as she was learning to. Then she opened the door briefly, stepping onto the small porch. The night was breathtaking, in quiet snow, covered streets, windows glowing softly in neighboring houses, a single porch light flickering across the way. She pulled her sweater tighter and breathed in the cold, clean air. Not the cold of fear, not the cold of the vault, but the cold that comes before warmth, before sunrise, before change. She whispered into the night, "We're home now, truly." A promise to tomorrow back inside, Lena returned to the fireplace, kneeling before it. The flames danced gently, low but alive. She adjusted the logs carefully, coaxing a little more warmth from them. In the flickering light, the gem she had kept shimmered like a small captured sunrise. She reached up and touched it with 2 fingers. "Thank you." She whispered, for what, she wasn't exactly sure. For the jeweler's honesty, for his courage, for the path he unknowingly led her onto, for the lesson he left behind, a lesson she would carry as long as she lived. She placed her hand on her heart, closed her eyes, and breathed, the soft kind of breath that belongs to people who are finally safe. And as she curled up beside Noah, the quilt pulled over them both, she felt something she hadn't felt since her childhood, a quiet excitement for morning. Tomorrow meant fresh snow, warm breakfast, new routines, a chair by the fire, a day without danger, a day meant to simply live. Lena brushed a kiss across Noah's forehead and whispered, "We have a future now." Outside, the night deepened into velvety stillness. Inside, the fire burned softly, casting a new kind of light across the walls. Not the light of fear, not the light of secrets, but the light of a hearth and a life that finally belonged to them. As Lena drifted to sleep, wrapped in warmth and hope, she realized something with quiet certainty. The storm had never been the end. It had been the test before the beginning, and now, at last, they were stepping into the life they were always meant to have. As the night settled like a soft blanket over their new home, Lena Hart understood. Their story wasn't just ending, it was beginning again.